DBFM Entertainment. DBFM Entertainment.
Your brain is for show, man. Your brain is for show, man.
DBFM Entertainment.
Alright, it's gonna be a long day. I just wanna go kayaking, I swear. But I got work to do, so that's what we're doing. So, this computer came in, and this is a home-built computer, and this is usually where we have the biggest amount of problems. People don't really know what they're building. So the guy turns this on, and the fans run. He gets no video display. And if you notice there, the processor fan kind of just kicks on and off there. That's what this is. And then there it goes, and then eventually it's just going to shut off, reboot, and keep trying. Ooh, actually I just noticed something. See these black tabs here? Might be a little hard to see. There's these black tabs, and this is what holds the heatsink on. Actually, that one's loose as shit. These two don't have those tabs on. Oh my god. Yeah, he fried his processor. I'm sure that's exactly what it is. Look at this thing. This isn't moving. Oh my god. Alright, bro. Well, that's what you did. I think. I don't know. Still gotta go through the diagnostic steps, but at least I know what to look at now. I'm gonna check his wiring as well. I know there's a couple screws that are missing from the motherboard. He's probably got standoffs underneath it that might have shorted it out. So we're just gonna tear this down and see what we find. So I gotta take his processor out. I'm sure that's exactly what happened, man. You probably just fried this chip. Ah, boy. Well, it's not the worst thing in the world that could have happened, I guess. Many people do it. In all fairness to him, these coolers, they really suck. I've made this mistake myself many times. It's kind of confusing when you first get these. They don't really tell you very well how to put these in. When I first got mine, all of these were turned like this, and the arrow doesn't really tell you what that means. It kind of think like, does it need to be turned like that? Is it supposed to? It's telling me go this way, so do I turn like that and then put it down? Well, the problem is this one's broken, so I can't show you as a good example, but the tab won't lock into place. If you look right in between that crack there, you can see that little tab. So if you have it like this, it's not going to lock in place. If you do this and then push it down, now it locks into place. That's what holds it in. See that? So that's what he messed up, and that's what he didn't do. And like I said, it's not really his fault. It's a very confusing cooler. I've made that mistake myself when I built my first PC. It's an easy mistake to make. Most of the time the system just will shut off right away because the processor gets to a certain temperature and then it basically just backs off of it. But over time, that happening repeatedly could cause damage to the system. And if that chip is constantly running hot, even if this is touching a little bit, it's still going to try to cool the processor. But if it's always running hot, then it's just going to weaken it over time, and that's probably what happened. He said he's been using this system for a while. He told me he got the power supply replaced. Oh, here's another thing. Look at that. Remove protective film before use. Strike 2. Anyway, he told me he had the power supply replaced, which, strike number 3, he doesn't even have secured in there. So, you know, home builder stuff, we see this all the time. Home builders don't really know what they're doing. They end up really messing everything up. But, you know, hey, that's how you learn, you know. You can't learn if you don't make mistakes. So, he made some mistakes. Hopefully he learns for the next one. So I'm going to finish tearing the rest of this down. We're going to let the motherboard sit, and then we're going to gradually start adding components to see if we can get a video display. So I'm going to take everything off the board. I'm going to put processor back on after it resets. 1 stick of memory. We're going to test it, see if we get video. And if we do get video, we'll slowly start adding parts. Sometimes when we get situations like this where it shorts out, we can disconnect everything from the board, let it sit, reassemble everything, might get power to it. I'm hoping for that because then I can get it up and have it run a full system diagnostic and check everything out and see if it's going to be stable. So let's get to it. Take care to remember the order that the stuff was in. It shouldn't really matter. You know, he doesn't have identical drives in here, so it's not a raid. But, you know, just for my sake, I like putting everything back together the way it was in the same orientation. So that'll keep everything good. Let's just get those guys out of the way for the time being. I'm gonna pop these memory sticks out. Nice. Good budget RAM. So we got strike number 1, strike number 2, strike number 3, strike 3.5. Didn't put a screw in the board. I'm still going to take the board out because I want to see what's underneath there. I want to make sure he doesn't have any other standoffs, you know, plugging it up. It shouldn't. I mean, this is a mini ITX case. There's only 4 screws here. You're not going to fit a bigger board, so I don't see why there'd be any reason for them to put more. But we got to check. We've got to check it. If there's a standoff underneath there, then it doesn't matter what I do. It's going to be the major problem. So we got to check it just to make sure. It's probably nothing, but it's something we have to do. Let's pop this baby out of here. So, good news. 4 standoffs, they're not touching, so that's good. That's his board. So, since there's nothing touching underneath, I got everything unplugged from the board, so I'm just going to go ahead and put it back in there. But we're going to let it sit for maybe 10 minutes. 5 minutes is usually sufficient. But I've got other things to do, so I'm going to let that sit in there. Interesting choice of screws he used. I usually like standard case screws. They're a little more robust. But hey, if the thread's correct and it holds the board in and it isn't shorting out other things, that's all you need. Now when I put these screws back in, you don't need to torque these down, man. These do not need to be tight. So I'll screw it in loose until it starts catching. So right here, right there, it's starting to bite. Now what I'll do is I'll just give it a 1/8 of a turn, 1/4 turn, something like that. It doesn't need to be much, just a little snug. Thumb tight. Some people will absolutely torque these down and then they crack the board. It's like, these don't need to be that tight. Just a little bit. We're going to go ahead and pull this piece out too, just so it doesn't damage any of the pins in the meantime. Alright, back at it. So it's been about 5 minutes. I wanted to show you here, I've got another system, similar cooler, and that's how it should be. All these pins should be pressed down with that arrow facing that way, but not rotated that way. So this one here, this one doesn't budge. That's secure. So his cooler's busted. He's missing 2 of those tabs, so I might have to use this in a second. But for now, we're just going to start connecting basic things. So processor we're going to put back in. This is the piece I think is fried. At least that's my guess off the bat. Could be something else though. Processors are pretty resilient. I don't see them fail very often, but they do. Okay. So now first thing we're going to do is I'm going to connect this. Just because it's a little hard to get past there if I got the RAM stick. And what do we have for channels? 2, 1, okay. So we're going to put this stick of RAM into slot 1. Now you may notice this side has tabs that go back and forth here. This side doesn't. On newer motherboards that have that, what you do is you center the pin center of the stick of RAM, I'm sorry. Get it lined up, press it down a little bit so it's kind of in there. Now you're going to press this side, get that latched in, and then the second one self-locks. Okay. So now we're going to take his processor again. I'm just going to set it on here. This thing is not in good shape. Okay. Yeah. I just need it centered for the time being. Alright, we're going to take our 8-pin connector for the CPU power. Plug that in right over here. It's always hard to see this stuff, and forgive me if you can't see inside. Sometimes I can barely see inside, and I have no idea if the camera can see it or not. I hope it can, for the most part. But anyway, 8-pin here, CPU connector, 24-pin here for the motherboard. Put one stick of RAM in. Got this in here as well. Now he's got HDMI output there. So I'm actually going to move the system over here for a second and borrow that HDMI output so I can test the board itself before I worry about throwing the graphics card into the mix. So let's try that. Alright, so now we got light on the board here. I don't have the light over here, so sorry that it might be a little dark, but it looks like the red one here is the power. So since we don't have a switch, we touch those two together to short it. And what do we got there? Okay. See if we get any video. No video, fan runs. This looks like the same symptoms as before, so it's probably what I expected. Probably a bad CPU. Can look up code 55 too. But so far it's not shutting off. Of course, right as I say it. And it should turn back on, yep. Okay, so same thing as before. Alright, so let's try this again. So it keeps going back to error code 55, which means it's not detecting the memory. So that's at least a better sign that it might not be a processor. Let's try to move this one over, see what happens. Sometimes the slot goes bad, sometimes it's the RAM. But we'll try that same stick of RAM. Okay, so that time it goes through different codes. So now it's stopped on code D7, which usually means there's no console input devices detected. That's a better sign though. So now it sounds like it's at least posting. Okay, so I'm going to put the graphics card back in, try and see if we can get some video here. Okay. So now hopefully we get that same D7, actually hopefully D7 goes away, and hopefully we get input here. Still comes back to D7, however there's display. which is good. That means that the processor probably isn't bad. We probably just have a bad RAM slot. So I'm going to take this stick of RAM out. I'm going to try this one in the slot that I think is bad, see if that works. If it doesn't work, then we know that's what we got. Okay. So this is now in the slot that I'm presuming is bad. So we're going to power that back up. And there's that code 55 again, which is telling me no memory detected. So the slot's probably bad, but we can try one more thing. Sometimes a bunch of crud just gets stuck in there. And just kind of wiggling it back and forth. Sometimes that'll loosen it up. Give it another try. Okay. Power up there, Johnny boy. Same error code, 55. So, more than likely, we just have a bad slot in this motherboard. Alright, post on again. And there it goes. It's going through the codes, which is good. Now we should have something coming up on this display. There it goes, kicks in. And there is BIOS. Alright. Well, plugging in a mouse and keyboard usually will solve the problem. And there you go, error code 64. Don't know what that is. But as soon as I plug that in, it changed from 67 to 64. So let's look back up here on these codes. 63 through 67, that's what it is, right? A6. A6. Good. Yeah, so it looks like it's functioning properly. It's just telling us that it's recognizing devices. So that's a good sign. We've got video on, so we know one stick is bad. So I'm going to take out that other cooler I was talking about and install that on here. And then I'm going to connect everything back together, see if it still comes up, and if it does, then we start running diagnostic tests. Alright, so we'll pull this bad boy out. Not too much concerned about the heatsink compound at this point. It's definitely going to be cleaned up. Yeah, I'm definitely going to clean it up before we get the system back to the customer. That's for certain. However, right now, just in diagnosing, like a new religion. I'm diagnostic. Yeah, there you go, diagnostic. Okay. Anyway, for diagnosing purposes, this is going to be more than sufficient. Make sure those are all the right direction. Good, good. Okay, pop these bad boys in. You should hear all of them click when they seat in. And the last one, it's a little difficult because you got to kind of press it in first, then push it in. Otherwise, it'll end up locking, but not actually being in the socket, and then it's kind of sitting cockeyed. All right, so now that we got that done, now we're gonna actually turn the system on. Well, I guess there's one more thing I've got to do. I'll do that later. I just need to reconnect all the power switches for it. But for now, we're gonna get this guy up and running. Let's see if it boots up. There goes Windows. Well, the good news is that the system boots up fine. So now we're going to have to go into the BIOS and switch around some boot settings. So I think this is Windows 10 on here. I didn't really pay too much attention. It's either Windows 7 or Windows 8, but both of those operating systems run off of what's called the UEFI BIOS. And for the most part, when booting to CDs for diagnostics or any other purpose, you have to switch it back to legacy, otherwise it will skip the boot. It's going to be looking for a UEFI boot device. So we're going to have to skip that. Let it run. See what happens. Next.